Socialism with a human face was promised by the newly appointed chairman of the Communist Party of Czechoslovakia, Alexander Dubcek, in the spring of 1968. This would come to be known as the Prague Spring. After the Second World War, Czechoslovakia was absorbed into the Communist Eastern Bloc as a Soviet puppet state. A communist government took power in 1948 and political opposition was purged, and Klement Gottwald, a firm believer of Stalinism, was appointed leader. He took charge of transforming Czechoslovakia into a Marxist-Leninist state. The industrial sector of the nation was nationalized and the agricultural sector was collectivized. Klement Gottwald died in March of 1953, 9 days after the death of Joseph Stalin, and Antonin Novotny replaced Gottwald and he continued the communist policies under Moscow's supervision. Discontent grew throughout the 50s and 60s in Czechoslovakia over the Soviet control of the nation, the declining living standards and the weak economy. Novotny was voted out of office by his own party and Alexander Dubcek would replace him. Dubcek was convinced that major reforms were needed to overcome the disillusionment of the people of Czechoslovakia with the current political and economic situation at the time. The plan was to breathe a new life into the ideals of socialism. In April 1968, Dubcek would launch an action program that would moderate the communist government, creating socialism with a human face. Dubcek and his government commenced major reforms: increased freedom of the press, increased freedom of speech, the release of political prisoners under the Stalinist regime, increased freedom of movement with the West, more economic emphasis on consumer goods, limiting the power of the secret police, the federalization of Czechoslovakia into 2 equal states instead of a unitary state, and the 10-year transition to a democratic socialist state. The program was based on the view that socialism cannot mean only the liberation of the working people from the domination of exploiting class relations, but must make more provisions for a fuller life of the personality than any bourgeoisie democracy. The Soviet Union and the leaders of the other Eastern Bloc countries grew concerned about the reforms in Czechoslovakia, fearing a downfall of communism in the nation. The Soviet leadership under Leonid Brezhnev tried to limit the reforms through a series of negotiations. These negotiations between Czechoslovakia and the Warsaw Pact, excluding Romania, Albania and East Germany, were unsuccessful in finding a lasting solution. The Soviets feared that if communism in Czechoslovakia fell, other nations in the Warsaw Pact would follow and the entire Eastern Bloc would disintegrate. The Soviets decided to intervene militarily to replace the reformist government with a government more loyal to Moscow. On the night of August 20th, 1968, 500,000 Warsaw Pact troops invaded Czechoslovakia. Dubcek and his government did not resist the invasion, and the people protested only in a non-violent manner. On August 21st, all of Czechoslovakia would be occupied, and the Prague Spring would come to an end, and the period of so-called normalization would begin. All the reforms, except the federalization of the nation, were reversed, and Czechoslovakia would be firmly in the Soviet sphere until the failed revolution and collapse of the Eastern Bloc in late 1989. Thank you for taking time to watch this video. If there are any improvements that I can make, leave them in the comments below. Goodbye.